Hello, friends. Welcome back to The English Cat. I am your host, and I am so happy you are here with me today. If this is your first time listening, this is a podcast for people who love the world and who are learning the English language. We speak slowly, we use clear words, and we take our time to explore the most beautiful places on Earth. Today, we have a very special, very long journey ahead of us. We are going to explore the largest country in the world. We are going to Russia. Now, when you think of Russia, what comes to your mind? Maybe you think of snow, maybe you think of bears, maybe you think of the Red Square in Moscow. These are all real parts of Russia. But today, we are going to look deeper. We are going to travel from the west to the east, across mountains, rivers, frozen lands, and deep lakes. So, please get comfortable. Maybe you are walking your dog, or maybe you are drinking a cup of warm tea. Relax your shoulders, take a deep breath. Let's open our map. Let's start with the basics. We need to understand the scale of Russia. The word scale means the size or the extent of something. When we talk about Russia, the scale is hard to imagine. It is huge. It is enormous. Russia covers more than 17 million square kilometers. That is a very big number, so let me explain it differently. Russia is almost twice the size of the United States. It is bigger than the surface area of the planet Pluto. Here is a fact that always surprises me. Russia is so wide that it spans, or covers, 11 time zones. Let's think about that for a second. 11 time zones. When a person in the west of Russia, in the city of Kaliningrad, is watching the sunset and getting ready for bed, a person in the far east on the Kamchatka Peninsula is already waking up and drinking their morning coffee. The country is waking up and going to sleep at the same time. Because the country is so big, it has borders with 14 other countries. To the west, it touches Norway, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and others. To the south, it touches China and Mongolia. It even shares a tiny maritime border with the United States out in the ocean. So we are not just talking about a country, we are talking about a geographical giant. To make our journey easier today, we are going to divide Russia into 4 main parts. First, we will look at European Russia. This is the part west of the Ural Mountains. Second, we will look at the Ural Mountains themselves and the frozen north. Third, we will travel into the famous region called Siberia. And finally, we will reach the Russian Far East, near the Pacific Ocean. Are you ready? Let's begin in the west. Most of the Russian people live in the western part of the country. We call this European Russia. Geographically, this area is known as the East European Plain. A plain is a useful vocabulary word. A plain is a large area of flat land with few trees. Sometimes we also call this flatland. If you stand in the middle of European Russia and look around, you will see fields and forests stretching out forever. It is relatively flat. Because it is so flat, the wind can blow very easily across the land. This flat geography is very important for history. Because there are no big mountains to block the way, it was easy for armies to move across this land in the past. But today, it is good for farming. This region has a specific climate. We call it a humid continental climate. Humid means there is moisture or water in the air. Continental refers to a large landmass. In this climate, the summers are warm and sometimes even hot, but the winters are long and cold. In the center of this plain lies the city of Moscow. Moscow is not just the capital city, it is a geographic hub. A hub is a center point, like the center of a wheel. All the roads and train lines lead to Moscow. But the most important geographic feature here is not a city. It is a river. It is the Volga River. Have you heard of the Volga? In Russian culture, they call it Matushka Volga, which means Mother Volga. The Volga is the longest river in Europe. It flows for over 3,500 kilometers. It starts in the hills northwest of Moscow, and it flows down to the Caspian Sea in the south. For English learners, let's look at the word flow. Flow is the movement of water. Rivers flow, tears flow, traffic flows. The Volga flows slowly. It is wide and calm. Historically, this river was the highway of Russia. Before trains and airplanes, people used the river to trade goods, to move food, and to travel. Even today, if you look at a map, you will see many big cities sitting right on the banks of the Volga River. One interesting fact about the Volga is where it ends. It flows into the Caspian Sea. The Caspian Sea is a very strange body of water. We call it a sea because it is salty and it is huge, but geographically, it's actually a lake. It is the largest lake in the world by surface area. It is not connected to the ocean. So the mighty Volga River empties all its water into this giant, closed lake. Now, let's travel north from the Volga. If we go north, towards the city of St. Petersburg, the landscape changes. It becomes wetter. There are thousands of lakes here. This is because a long time ago, during the Ice Age, glaciers covered this land. A glacier is a massive, slow-moving river of ice. When the glaciers moved, they carved holes in the ground. When the ice melted, these holes filled with water and became lakes. St. Petersburg is a city built on islands and marshland. A marsh is wet, muddy ground. It is very difficult to build a city on a marsh, but Peter the Great, the Russian Tsar, wanted a window to Europe. So they built canals and drained the water. Today, St. Petersburg is famous for its canals, much like Venice in Italy. The weather here is also unique. Because St. Petersburg is so far north, they have a phenomenon called the White Nights. Have you heard of this? In June and July, the sun barely sets. At midnight, the sky is still light. You can read a book outside at 2 a.m. It is a magical geographical trick caused by the tilt of the Earth. Now, let's leave the flat plains of the West. We are moving east. We are approaching a very important line on the map. We are approaching the Ural Mountains. The Ural Mountains are like a zipper. They connect the West to the East. Or you can think of them as a wall that divides Europe from Asia. But these are not like the Alps or the Himalayas. The Urals are old mountains. Let's talk about the word erosion. Erosion happens when wind and rain wear down rocks over millions of years. Because the Urals are so old, erosion has made them shorter and rounder. They are not sharp and jagged. They are gentle, covered in forests. These mountains are incredibly rich. They are full of minerals and gems. For centuries, Russia has mined gold, platinum, and precious stones like emeralds from these mountains. We often call the Urals the treasure box of Russia. An interesting geographic fact about the Urals is how long they are. They stretch from the frozen Arctic Ocean in the north all the way down to the hot deserts of Kazakhstan in the south. That is a distance of about 2,500 kilometers. Because they are so long, the climate changes as you travel along them. In the southern Urals, you might see grassy hills and steppe on dry ground, but if you travel to the northern Urals, the environment becomes much harsher. Let's put on our warm coats. We are going to the northern Urals and the Arctic coast. Here, we encounter a new biome. A biome is a large community of plants and animals that live in a specific climate. The biome here is called the tundra.
Tundra is a word that comes from the local Sami people. It means treeless plain. Imagine a land where it is too cold for trees to grow. The ground is frozen hard. The only plants you see are moss, lichen, and small shrubs. A shrub is a small bush. This land is cold, windy, and empty. But underneath the ground, there is something very important. It is called permafrost. Let's break that word down. Perma comes from permanent, meaning forever. Frost means frozen. So permafrost is ground that stays frozen all year round forever. Even in the summer, if the top layer of dirt melts a little bit, the ground underneath remains solid ice. This makes building houses very difficult. If you build a warm house on permafrost, the heat from the house will melt the ice, and the house will sink into the mud. So, in the north of Russia, buildings are often built on stilts, long legs that keep the house off the ground. One of the biggest cities in this northern region is Murmansk. Murmansk is the largest city in the world located north of the Arctic Circle. It is a port city. Surprisingly, the water in the port does not freeze in the winter. Why? Because of the Gulf Stream. Warm water from the Atlantic Ocean flows up and keeps the port ice-free. It is a strange mix of freezing air and flowing water. We have explored the flat European plain, we have climbed the old Ural mountains, we have touched the frozen tundra. But our journey is only just beginning. If we stand on top of the Ural Mountains and look east, we see something overwhelming. We see a land that is vast, wild, and mysterious. We are looking at Siberia. Siberia is our next destination. It is a land of sleeping giants, massive swamps, and the deepest lake in the world. But before we step into Siberia, let's take a quick rest. Let's review some of the words we learned. We learned scale, which means size. We learned plain, which is flat land. We learned flow, the movement of a river. We learned erosion, the wearing down of mountains. And we learned permafrost, the permanently frozen ground. Take a sip of your tea. When we come back, we are going to catch a train, the Trans-Siberian Railway, and cross the wild heart of Asia. We are standing at the top of the Ural Mountains. Behind us is Europe. In front of us is Asia. We are about to step into a region that is famous all over the world. It is a place that sounds mysterious and maybe a little frightening. We are entering Siberia. When people hear the word Siberia, they often think of snow and prison camps. But geographically, Siberia is much more than that. It is a place of incredible beauty and size. Let's talk about the size first. Siberia makes up about 77% of Russia's territory. That is more than 3/4 of the country. Yet only about 27% of the Russian people live here. Imagine a huge house with 10 rooms. In this house, 7 of the rooms are empty or almost empty. That is Siberia. It is vast, wild, and quiet. As we come down from the Ural Mountains on the eastern side, we enter the West Siberian Plain. Do you remember in the first part of our journey, we talked about the East European Plain? Well, this is its sister, but the West Siberian Plain is even flatter. In fact, it is one of the flattest places on Earth. Because it is so flat, the water has nowhere to go. It sits on the ground. This creates the world's largest swamps and marshes. A swamp is a wetland, an area of land that is permanently saturated or filled with water. Imagine a giant sponge that is soaking wet. That is the West Siberian Plain. Here lies the Vasyugan Swamp. It is huge. It is actually bigger than the entire country of Switzerland. Can you imagine that? A swamp bigger than a country? In the summer, this area is difficult to travel through. It is muddy and wet. And I must warn you, there are many mosquitoes, millions of them. But underneath this wet ground lies a different kind of liquid treasure. This region holds most of Russia's oil and gas. If you heat your home in Europe, the gas likely comes from deep beneath this swamp. As we move east past the swamps, the land begins to change. We enter the taiga. Please remember this word, taiga. In the last section, we talked about the tundra in the north, where no trees grow. The taiga is different. The taiga is a forest. But it is not just any forest. It is the largest forest in the world. It stretches for thousands of kilometers. The taiga is made up mostly of coniferous trees. Coniferous trees are trees with needles instead of leaves, like pine trees, spruce trees, and larch trees. They stay green all year round. If you fly over Siberia in an airplane, you can look out the window for hours, and all you will see is a dark green ocean of trees. We often call this the Green Sea. These trees are very important for our planet. Just like the Amazon rainforest in South America, the Siberian taiga acts as a lung for the Earth. The trees breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Even if you live far away in America or Japan or Brazil, the air you breathe is connected to this forest in Russia. The climate here is extreme. We call it a continental climate, but it is an extreme version. Because Siberia is so huge and so far away from any ocean that could warm it up, the land gets very, very cold. Let me tell you about a village called Oymyakon. Oymyakon is located in northeastern Siberia. It is known as the Pole of Cold. It is the coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth. Inhabited means people live there. They have schools, shops, and homes. In Oymyakon, the temperature has dropped to minus 71 degrees Celsius. That's minus 71 degrees C. That is hard to imagine. At that temperature, if you throw a cup of boiling water into the air, it turns into ice before it hits the ground. If you blink your eyes, your eyelashes might freeze together. It is a dangerous, powerful cold. But the people there are tough. They have adapted to their geography. Now, let's look at the rivers of Siberia. Siberia has 3 giant rivers: the Ob, the Yenisei, and the Lena. These rivers are giants. They are wide and deep, but they have a strange behavior. Most big rivers in the world flow towards the equator, or they flow east or west. But the Siberian rivers flow north. They start in the mountains of the south, near Mongolia and China, and they flow all the way up to the frozen Arctic Ocean. This creates a very interesting geographical problem in the spring. Think about it. Spring arrives in the south first. So the snow melts in the south, the water starts to flow, but further north, near the ocean, the river is still frozen solid with thick ice. So the liquid water from the south runs into the ice dam in the north. The water has nowhere to go, so it spills over the banks. This causes massive floods every year. The rivers become like oceans, covering the land for miles. We're going to follow the Yenisei River now. The Yenisei divides Siberia in half. West of the Yenisei, the land was flat, but east of the Yenisei, the land rises up. We are entering the Central Siberian Plateau. A plateau is a high, flat area of land. Imagine a table. It is flat on top, but it sits high above the floor. This area is wilder. It is full of canyons and cliffs. It is a hard, rocky place. But if we keep traveling east, past the plateau, we reach the jewel of Russia, the most famous geographical wonder in the entire country. We have arrived at Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal is special. Let me tell you why. First, it is the deepest lake in the world. It goes down more than 1,600 meters. That is more than 1 mile deep. If you put the tallest building in the world into this lake, it would disappear completely underwater. Second, it is the oldest lake in the world. Most lakes live for a few thousand years and then dry up or fill with dirt. But Baikal has been here for 25 million years. Third, and this is the most amazing fact, Lake Baikal holds 20% of the world's unfrozen freshwater. Let's check the vocabulary here. Freshwater is water you can drink. It is not salty like the ocean. Think about all the rivers, all the lakes, and all the streams on the entire planet Earth. 1/5 of all that liquid water is sitting right here in this one lake in Siberia. The water in Baikal is incredibly clear. In the winter, the lake freezes over. The ice can be 2 meters thick. But the ice is so transparent, so clear, that you can look down through it and see the rocks on the bottom. It feels like you are walking on glass. Because the lake is so old and isolated, it has animals that live nowhere else on Earth. The most famous is the nerpa, or the Baikal seal. Usually seals live in the ocean, right? But the nerpa is a freshwater seal. It lives only in Lake Baikal, thousands of kilometers away from the sea. It is small, round, and has big dark eyes. Scientists are still debating how exactly the seals got here. It is one of the mysteries of Russian geography. Surrounding the lake are mountains and forests. It is a sacred place for the local people, the Buryats. They believe the lake has a spirit. When you stand on the shore of Baikal, you feel small. The air is fresh and cold. The water looks like dark blue ink. It is a place of peace. We have traveled a long way today. We crossed the swamps of the West Siberian plain. We flew over the endless green sea of the Taiga forest. We felt the freezing air of Oymyakon, and we stood on the glass ice of Lake Baikal. But believe it or not, we are not finished. Russia is even bigger than this. East of Lake Baikal, the land changes again. The forests become wilder, the mountains become taller, and the ground begins to shake. We are heading toward the Russian Far East. This is the land of volcanoes, tigers, and the Pacific Ocean. It is a place where fire meets ice. But that is a story for the next part of our journey. Why don't we take a short break? Stretch your legs, maybe look at a map of Siberia to see the places we just talked about. Find the Yenisei River. Find Lake Baikal. See how they look from above. When we return, we will travel to the edge of the continent. We are going to Kamchatka. Welcome back, travelers. I hope you enjoyed our break. We have traveled a very long way together. We started in the cities of the West, we climbed the Ural Mountains, and we crossed the endless forests of Siberia. We stood on the ice of Lake Baikal. Now we are moving to the final frontier. We are entering the Russian Far East. If you look at a map, this is the part of Russia that touches the Pacific Ocean. It is a land of extremes. It is beautiful, dangerous, and very, very wild. This region is so far away from Moscow that the time difference is 7 or 8 hours. When people in Moscow are eating lunch, people in the Far East are eating dinner. Our first stop in this region is a place that looks like it belongs on another planet. It is the Kamchatka Peninsula. Let's learn the word peninsula. A peninsula is a piece of land that sticks out into the water. It has water on 3 sides. Florida in the United States is a peninsula. Italy is a peninsula. And here, sticking out into the cold Pacific Ocean, is Kamchatka. Kamchatka is famous for one thing: volcanoes. This land is alive. It is part of the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire is a giant circle around the Pacific Ocean where the Earth's tectonic plates crash into each other. Because of this crashing, there are many earthquakes and volcanoes. Japan is on the Ring of Fire, Chile is on the Ring of Fire, and Kamchatka is right there too. There are over 300 volcanoes on this peninsula, and 29 of them are still active. Active means they are not sleeping. They smoke. They rumble. Sometimes they explode. The highest volcano is called Klachivskaya Sopka. It is a perfect white cone shape. It looks like a pyramid made of snow. It is nearly 5,000 meters tall. It is the highest active volcano in all of Eurasia. Imagine standing there. The ground under your feet is warm because of the magma deep underground, but the air around you is freezing cold. You can see steam rising from the ground. These are called geysers. A geyser is a hole in the ground that shoots hot water and steam into the air. There is a famous place here called the Valley of Geysers. It is a hidden canyon where the river boils and steam clouds fill the air. It is very difficult to get there. You can only go by helicopter. It is one of the most protected nature reserves in the world. Because the ground is hot and the air is cold, Kamchatka is a land of contrasts, fire and ice. But the Russian Far East is not just volcanoes. If we travel south from Kamchatka, we reach a region called Primorsky Krai. Primorsky translates to maritime, which means connected to the sea. This area borders China and North Korea, and here, the geography creates something very strange. In most of Russia, the climate is continental, dry summers and cold winters. But here, on the coast, the climate is influenced by the ocean. They have monsoons. A monsoon is a seasonal wind pattern In the summer, the wind blows from the ocean to the land, bringing heavy rain and fog. In the winter, the wind blows from the cold land to the ocean, bringing dry, freezing air. Because of this unique climate, you see a mix of nature that shouldn't exist together. You can see northern trees, like pine and spruce, growing next to southern plants, like grapes and lotus flowers. And the animals are just as surprising. This is the home of the Amur tiger. You might know it as the Siberian tiger. It is the largest cat in the world. It is bigger than a lion. Usually we think of tigers living in the hot jungles of India, but the Amur tiger lives in the snow. It has developed a thick coat of fur and a layer of fat to keep it warm. Imagine seeing a bright orange tiger walking silently through a white, snowy forest. It is a powerful image of how nature adapts to geography. There is also the Amur leopard, which is even rarer. It is one of the most endangered cats on Earth. They hide in the rugged mountains of this region, staying away from humans. Now, let's travel to the edge of the land. Let's look at the city of Vladivostok. Vladivostok is the capital of the Far East. Its name means ruler of the East. Geographically, it is a very interesting city. It is built on hills overlooking a bay called the Golden Horn. It looks a little bit like San Francisco in the United States, but with Russian architecture. It is a port city. Ships leave from here to go to Japan, South Korea, and China. It is the end of the line for the famous Trans-Siberian Railway. If you get on a train in Moscow and travel for 7 days, this is where you stop. You have reached the Pacific Ocean. Finally, we cannot talk about the Far East without mentioning the islands. Off the coast lies a long, thin island called Sakhalin. Sakhalin is shaped like a fish. It is very rich in oil and natural gas. The winters here are brutal. The storms coming off the Sea of Okhotsk are fierce. South of Kamchatka, there is a chain of islands called the Ural Islands. These islands are like stepping stones connecting Russia to Japan. They are volcanic, foggy, and mysterious. Geographically, they are a wall that separates the Sea of Okhotsk from the open Pacific Ocean. The water here is incredibly rich in fish. It's cold and full of oxygen, which is perfect for marine life like salmon, crabs, and whales. So, the Russian Far East is a place of energy, the energy of volcanoes, the energy of storms, and the energy of the ocean. It is the wild backyard of Russia where nature is still the boss. We have now seen the four corners of this giant country. We saw the flat, historic West. We saw the old, mineral-rich Urals. We saw the vast, frozen heart of Siberia, and we have seen the fiery, volcanic East. But a country is not just land and rocks. Geography shapes the people, and the people shape the geography. In our final section, we are going to look at the human geography of Russia. We will talk about how people survive in these climates, how they travel across such huge distances, and we will summarize the amazing things we have learned today. We will also look at some of the strange and funny geographical facts that didn't fit into the other sections. So stay with me. We are almost at the end of our journey. Grab a warm blanket and let's get ready for the grand finale. We have traveled thousands of kilometers today. We have seen mountains, rivers, swamps, and volcanoes. But a country is more than just dirt and water. A country is also about the people who live there and how they live there. In this final section, I want to talk about human geography. Human geography is the study of how people interact with their environment. In Russia, the environment is tough. It is big and it is cold. So, how do people connect such a giant land? The answer is steel and steam. The answer is the Trans-Siberian Railway. We cannot talk about Russian geography without talking about this train. It is the longest railway line in the world. It connects Moscow in the west to Vladivostok in the east. The distance is over 9,200 kilometers. Let's imagine we are buying a ticket. We get on the train in Moscow, we will live on this train for 7 days and 7 nights. The Trans-Siberian is not just a way to move people, it is a way of life. Inside the train, it is warm. Outside, the temperature might be freezing. But inside, people are drinking hot tea. In Russian trains, tea is served in a special glass with a metal holder. It is called a podstakonik. The metal holder protects your hands from the hot glass. You sit by the window, sipping your tea, and watching the geography roll by. For the first day, you see cities and factories. On the third day, you see the Ural Mountains. On the fourth and fifth days, you see the endless birch forests of Siberia. On the sixth day, you see the sparkling water of Lake Baikal. This train is the string that ties the huge geography of Russia together. Without it, the East and West would feel like different planets. Now, let's talk about the cold. How do Russians survive the winter? There is a famous saying in Russia, there is no bad weather, there are only bad clothes. This is an example of adaptation. Adaptation means changing your behavior to survive in your environment. In many Western countries, when it snows, schools close and traffic stops. In Russia, life goes on. The cities are designed for the cold. In most Russian cities, the heat in your apartment does not come from a private furnace in your basement. It comes from a giant central plant in the city. Huge pipes carry hot water under the streets to heat thousands of buildings at once. This is called district heating. It is a geographical solution to a climate problem. Another interesting part of human geography is the dacha. A dacha is a summer house. It is usually a small cottage in the countryside, just outside the city. In the summer, millions of Russians leave their concrete apartments in the city and go to their dachas. They plant gardens, they grow potatoes, cucumbers, tomatoes, and berries. This is a very strong cultural connection to the land. Even people who work in modern offices with computers spend their weekends with their hands in the dirt. They're staying connected to the geography that feeds them. Before we finish, I want to share a few fun facts. These are strange geographical details that make Russia unique. Fact number 1, the deepest hole. We talked about the deepest lake, Baikal, but did you know Russia also has the deepest hole ever dug by humans? It is called the Kola Super Deep Borehole. It is located in the far northwest, near the border with Norway. Scientists dug down 12 kilometers into the earth just to see what was down there. They found microscopic fossils and rocks that acted like plastic. They put a metal cap on it now, but it's still there, a door to the center of the earth. When you think of Russia, you think of snow, but there is a city called Sochi. Sochi is on the Black Sea in the southwest. It's on the same latitude as Nice in France. In Sochi, there are palm trees. There are beaches. It is humid and warm, yet huge mountains are right behind the city. In the winter, you can swim in the sea in the morning and go skiing in the mountains in the afternoon. This is where the 2014 Winter Olympics were held. It shows that Russia is not just one climate, it is many. Fact number 3, the Diamond City. In Siberia, there is a town called Mirny. It exists for one reason: diamonds. Right next to the town is a giant open pit mine. It is a huge hole in the ground, more than 500 meters deep and a kilometer wide. It is so big that helicopters are not allowed to fly over it. Why? Because the air currents inside the hole can suck the helicopter down and make it crash. It's a terrifying and amazing example of how humans change geography. And so, my friends, we have reached the end of our journey. Let's look back at where we have been. We started our 2-hour tour in the European plain. We saw the great Volga River flowing slowly to the Caspian Sea. We walked the streets of St. Petersburg and saw the White Knights. We climbed the ancient Ural Mountains, the stone belt that separates Europe from Asia. We learned about erosion and the treasures hidden in the rocks. We ventured into the wild Siberia. We learned about the tundra and the permafrost. We saw the endless green sea of the Taiga forest. We stood on the shores of Lake Baikal, the deepest, oldest freshwater lake in the world. And finally, we traveled to the Far East. We saw the Ring of Fire. We watched the volcanoes of Kamchatka smoke and steam. We saw the tigers in the snow and the port of Vladivostok. Russia is a difficult country to understand because of its scale. It is too big for one mind to hold. But by looking at its geography, its bones, its blood, its skin, we can start to understand it better. Geography tells us why history happened. Geography tells us how people live. Geography tells us who we are. I hope this journey has helped you practice your English. We used many new words today: scale, plain, tundra, permafrost, peninsula, coniferous, adaptation. Take these words with you, use them, explore the world with them. Thank you for listening to the English Atlas. I am your host, and it has been a pleasure to be your guide. Until next time, keep exploring.